Well, welcome to the Otherworldly, the Changing Times, Changing World show. Tonight, I do not expect a huge crowd because it is the night before Thanksgiving. But I'm home, so I'm going to do the show anyway. And tonight, I'm going to talk about how we deal with holidays as alternative practitioners. And I will be very happy to have anybody who wants to tell me more about it. I'm going to start out with talking a little bit about my family. If you went over to the website, I have it whole, I elongated the blog post with a run through the year and what we do. But coming up in the near future, we have the I'm Chipicon. I should probably say that. When people would ask me, as I've been openly pagan since I was 15, and after a while, people kept saying, "Well, what are you? What kind of pagan are you?" And so I finally started saying, I'm the New England peasant pagan tradition. Now, that term comes from peasant because we have a small farm, which I don't work that much anymore. But we have had goats and chickens and pigs and a lot, and sheep and things. And we have, and so that's the peasant part, and this pagan tradition, and it's New England because I feel very strongly that all traditions, all religions are local. You celebrate your local stuff. For instance, in our tradition, we have we tend to think of the East as water and the West as land. I'm not sure how Europe came about hers. It's very easy to see if you're in California or if you're in Europe that West would be water. But when I am feeling land, and it's like, if I'm trying to figure out which way is south and which way is north, yeah, that way is east, because that I'm feeling thousands of miles of water. I got 3,000 miles of land to the west. So that leaves air to the north for me. So, but it's personal. Everybody, all your things should be personal. The feasts, the events that we celebrate the maple harvest. That's the first the harvest of the year. We celebrate strawberries when the first strawberries come in. We celebrate the apples when they come in. We celebrate the fall when, and we celebrate when the corn gets ripe. These are things that are just the natural cycle, and apparently, New England Native Americans pretty much followed a similar pattern of feasts. But before we, while we do those, which are kind of personal, I came up with a calendar for our tradition, which uses the 8 solar points, the two equinoxes, the 2 solstices, and the points between them. And so if you think about Yule, which is the next big one coming up, you've got solstice. And then 2 weeks before that, on the 6th of December, is the day when the solstice is the shortest day of the year. The 6th of December is the latest sunrise. And then if you go to the 6th of January, that's the earliest sunset. So if you want to be looking at when's the earliest sunset, no, they're not lined up on the same day. It's kind of, so the entire 6th of December to the 6th of January, that's the dark season. That is the Yule season. And so we recognize that. And so I'm going to give you that one. I'll give you that block of time is for you. But then after you get to the 6th, I'm going to put in an entire period, what I refer to as the, or we refer to from January 7th to, for at least the next 2 weeks, is, we call it winter rest. And if you've been stuffing your face with all the treats from Yule, which presumably pretty much used up by the 6th, the 2 weeks after that is what they used to call fast days. It wasn't that you were not eating anything. Fasting was simply that you were eating simply. You were eating porridge, you were eating beans, you were eating, you weren't eating the special food. And we try and alternate that so you can kind of build up again to after winter rest. Then we get into what I refer to as midwinter, because in New England, if you're going to have a lot of snowfall, it happens in frickin' February. I don't know what's going on in England or France or any place where they develop the Wiccan calendar, but Imbolc and Olmec, you do not have a lot of little babies frisking around. We don't have spring flowers. You have to go to a hothouse to get the flowers to put on your altar. You're not celebrating in what I would consider a natural way. So we call we call that midwinter, and around February 1st or 2nd. And we call it Groundhog's Day, and we watch Bill Murray learning how to be a nice guy, which is a lovely thing. And then we have a particular a holiday that is specifically for our tradition, which is Broom Day and Broom Time. And Broom Time is the spring cleaning times from February 22nd to March 6th. And that's when we do the spring cleaning. The light is beginning to come back. You're beginning to say, okay, we got to get our button gear, and you start kind of coming back away. And the 21st of March, you can have the equinox. The equinox is going to happen the way it happens in the sky. And so we will call the weeks before and the weeks after a star a season. And then we get a spring rest during the beginning of April. And then May Day, Walpurgis Night, that's May 1st, fine. And the Beltane season will go just before it and just after it. And then we get the spade time, which is about, May 15th to June. That's when you're putting the garden in. So that's spade time, and that it is a time of working, regrouping, and it gives you something to do. Summer solstice, there's the strawberries. The solstice happens either on 21st, 22nd, depending on the year. And then we have summer rest is June to July, and then you get what we don't call the summer solstice midsummer, because it's not. It's the beginning of summer. We call August 1st midsummer, and because that's when the heat's getting you down and the dog days come in, and the rest period in between that is we call it hoe time, because if you've got a garden, you better be out there dealing with the weeds. And also reinforcing your fence, because the idea of sharing with the natural world around you is not something that a gardener wants. You want the food for yourself. You get the fall equinox. We don't do a whole lot of celebrating. You're busy working, and you're really excited about having the food that you've grown. And then then we have fall rest, beginning to late October, and then we could have the Halloween season grouped around the 31st, and then that can be the Samhain season, and then we're coming in right now into what we call blood time, which is the time when you're if you have animals, you're putting them down, you're putting them in the freezer, and in the ancient world they were sharing them with neighbors. One person would kill a pig, everybody would eat that pig for a while, then another person, and you'd share it with your neighbors, and then the next person would kill their pig. But you always wait until the mosquitoes are gone, and the flies and the other things that might lay their eggs in it. So that's why you wanted to get cool. So that's why that. But if you have dealt with the natural world in that intimate level of growing your own food, weeding, hoeing, harvesting, it's different. And then you get up to Yule, and as I started out, Yule is that season at the darkest time of the year. And I'm just going to say, we have coming up next, is it next week? Jane Sibley on the 29th, which is next week, is going to be talking to us about the Oriskaya, which is a Norwegian, Jane, since you happen
Oskoraya, which is also called Oskoraya, which is also called the Asgard's, and that would be the big storms in November coming. And so I will be talking about that next week.
So
I don't want to give it away right now.
No, we can look forward to it, but as long as Jane was here, I figured I would get her to say it with the right pronunciation. And then on the 6th of December, we've got Arkenstone, who'll be talking about lucid dreaming. And on the 13th of December, Chris Croucher is going to be running through and teaching us. He does something called a long night rune ritual. So if you like runes, if you like celebrating a solstice, that'll be something that can do, and we'll put down that. And then Mother Night, maybe if I can't find another guest, I will be talking about the matrons, or the mothers. We talk a lot in pagan circles about the maiden, mother, and crone, but at least in most of traditions, it was the mothers, it was the maternal ancestors that you were dealing with. It was the female deities who were that. And so we'll be the Venerable Beda talked about the Mother Night was the night before the solstice. So solstice, we have a big blowout, but Mother Night is personal. And I think this is one of the big advantages of paganism or pagan practices. When you're polytheistic, you don't have to deal with other people's gods. We are coming out of a monotheistic background, so we spend a great deal of time trying to make, say, a Wiccan circle or a pagan something be welcoming to everybody. Well, in a polytheistic culture, you didn't have to do that. The warriors were all off following Mithras or whoever their particular warrior was that they followed. The farmers were dealing with Thor or with whoever was dealing with the crops. The smiths were dealing with the smith god. But nobody really wanted to piss off the mother, because everybody, the guys wanted to be able to get it up, and the women wanted to have children, and so nobody pisses off the mother, because that's just not smart. But by and large, no. If you were a smith, you had no business knowing what the rites were, or what. You didn't have to deal with worshiping the smith god. If you were in a shop in town and you did leather work, you didn't have to worry about the farming gods and Jupiter or whoever, because that wasn't where your focus was. You, in a polytheistic venue, you dealt with the gods that came up and shook you by the nape of the neck, and they're the ones you worked with. And yes, sometimes the gods will do this. Sometimes they will come to your dreams often, or into the back of your head and start nagging at you. So you may or may not have heard me talk about Mother Hola, who I wanted to learn how to spin flax. I was working on that. So I thought dedicating myself to Mother Hola would be a clever idea. I did not think at the moment I did that Mother Hola is also the goddess of keeping a house and housework. And I would try to go to bed and she'd say, there are dishes in the sink. And I would try to go to bed and she said, the floor is not swept. I was like, I've got to go do my art. Well, you got to clean up first. It's like, yeah, always do your freaking research before you get into a relationship with a god. But I think it is wonderful. We don't have to invite our entire family into whatever we're doing with our personal deities. Mother Night, I always tell the kids, I'm doing my Mother Night thing. If you want to join me at any point, feel free. But if you don't, that's okay. This is for me. And I make some special cookies. I put up the Mother Night altar. I make an offering to the Idisi, the goddesses, the ancestral goddesses. And it's for me. And I don't, don't be ask. I'm not asking anybody else to participate with it. I will be happy to share with all other people who work with the mothers. But it's not something that I think is absolutely necessary. So we can, when we're working with different gods and goddesses, we don't have to make it available to everybody. The men have their traditions, the women have their traditions. The people who work with metal have their traditions. The people who work with stone have their traditions. The people who work with the plants have their traditions. The healers have healing gods. So you can have different things. Now, different things become really important to you depending on your local, but the weather, the harvests, whatever, locally, and what you're doing. For instance, the first snow day of the year was, we called that the Feast of Brothers and Sisters, and it was all about, let's have the kids show each other some appreciation. And I'll be quite honest with you, I stole that one out of the Clan of the Cave Bear series, the Earth's Children. Of course, with them, that was the brothers and sisters were the important relationships in their tribes. But broom day, when we have broom day, I go out, I buy a new broom, and we name the broom, and we write the name on the broom. And when you have a new broom that has been, you brought a personality into it, and you talk to it and you work with it, it's another entity that is helping you to work. Cleaning is a lot easier. And then, last year's broom gets to, sent upstairs for sweeping the upstairs. And then the older broom goes down out into the barn to sweep the barn. So, but broom day is a little celebration that we made up. And sometimes I would make broom shaped cookies to go with it. I am very big on food. And so I look at food as a way of celebrating. And so I like I make the hot cross buns at Ostara, but in case you said, but isn't that a Christian thing? Well, yeah, it kind of was a Christian thing, but Beta was talking about that Astara, they gave gifts to the goddesses. Well, gee, and they said, well, we're going to try and we'll let them make their cakes, but we'll put a sign of the cross on it so that it's not going to the goddesses. Well, yeah. And how many pagans do you use? Use the 4 quarters? Come on. We can use the cross too. Not a big deal. And around the year, I mean, frankly, if anybody's got a good holiday, I will, and it's got good food. I've discovered for Samhain, they have that you could get soul cakes for Souls Day, All Souls Day, and in Mexico they make the pan de muerte, which is a orange and anise flavored loaf with a skull and crossbones on it. It's delicious. And then you go a few days after that, and you have Guy Fawkes Day in England, which is kind of where they adopted bonfires. Well, heck, when you have holidays in November and it's beginning to get cold, gee, a bonfire makes a lot of sense. And besides which, they love to hate the people who tried to blow up Parliament, and I can get behind that. but it is always celebrated in England with fireworks, bonfires, and toffee, which is a kind of a browned sugar. So it's and I hate to say it, guys, but it's really dumb easy to make. You put it's like you melt the butter and you put the sugar in and you wait until it melts together, and you just wait until it begins to smell just right, and then maybe put a shot of vanilla and pour it on the plate or the slab. It's really not as hard to make candy as you think it is. But anyway, that is a thing. But we watch V for Vendetta because why not? Everybody hates the concept of people who are overreaching their powers, and so we're gonna tomorrow. Soon after the show, I'm making 3 pies for our family for tomorrow, and we'll be having a turkey. We tried goose for Christmas. We tried turkey, but I kind of go down to we've defaulted with roast beef. We're going to go with our English background with that, and I go to town and making all kinds of cookies, and we used to do St. Nicholas Eve, which is the 6th of December. But because we would use that, little kids would put out their shoes and with a carrot in it for St. Nicholas horse, and they would get little gifts. Well, we use that as an excuse to giving any gifts, like if hair ties for little girls in the green and red, any Christmas music, because if you give somebody Christmas music on Christmas and then the rest of the world is like, not another carol, I can't take it. Better to give it to them early. Of course, in the last 5 or 6 years, Americans have discovered Krampus and Krampus Night. And Krampus is one of the many sidekicks of the saint who brings gifts. And he was the one who would beat up the kids who were naughty. And I just think that's, but Americans have gotten into that. Let's have another monster holiday. And the week after that, I go crazy for, just a second, let me finish this thought, Jane, and I'll ask you to speak. Santa Lucia Day, the 13th, because Santa Lucia buns they're saffron and yummy, and they're very good. And it's a kind of sad if you think about one of the daughters, they sometimes say youngest, sometimes the oldest, would bring the parents breakfast in bed with the saffron buns and the coffee and a crown of evergreens and lighted candles on her head. You don't want your youngest daughter doing that. I'm sorry. But if it's the youngest, then it can cycle through. So who knows? Maybe they did. My husband made our kids a little electric candles like you put in the windows. We put them onto a wreath for them with a tiny battery, so that would do that. Jane, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to go into the family tradition that I grew up in. We were called blue domers, in other words, the blue dome of the heavens. And so it was not any particular gods or anything, but it's just as applied. And we didn't have the intersolstices. There was Yule, and there was midsummer. And midsummer is when you gathered the herbs that you needed, because that would be the most powerful thing, that you'd have the bonfires then. Yule, of course, is when you feed yourself. You have the Julebord, you have the all sorts of goodies. And we didn't have all these different ones. But then you see, you have a family that is, and I have, well, we're kind of free floating. But I wanted to
No, the blue dome
add a
sounds
couple
really
of
cool.
interesting holidays that are about now that have just sprung up. In there was a cartoonist, Al Cap, and he did Lil Abner, and so he came up with Sadie Hawkins Day, and Sadie Hawkins was apparently the ugliest woman in Dogpatch, and she would be asking, she desperately wanted to have a husband, and when she was 35, which is old at that time, then they started having a Sadie Hawkins Day where the women would chase down bachelors to grab them, and the one that they could grab, they would marry. And so Al Cap set the date for November 26th. Today, then more recently, was where girls could ask boys for a date or to go dancing or something like that. It was sort of calmed down. Another one, which is much more recent, is called Wolfenoot, Wolfenoot. And there was a 7-year-old boy who came up, he started it to celebrate dogs. And and this has gone pretty much viral. You can Google both. And on Wolfenoot, you would eat roast meat because that's what dogs would eat. And you'd have a cake decorated like a full moon. And so these are some of the more modern holidays that one can celebrate. You could be Christian or pagan and enjoy. But anyway, I thought I'd just bring these up. December 25th was when Mithras emerged from the rock. And the rock had to have been a meteorite. And because he had to be transited down from the celestial plane through what was considered a hard rock to the lower plane for the pteroktony or the bull slaying. And a lot of the Mithraic things, when you really look at it, is time, the day and night. You've got Cautes and Cautopates. You've got the bull's tail frequently entering in grain, and sometimes the blood coming out was grain. So this was a harvest. This was a fertility thing. And but his emergence was December 25th. And so this is, Mithraism was extremely popular in the Roman Empire. And then when Christianity came in, all of a sudden, Jesus was born on May, when he was probably born either in late spring, the lambing season, and not on December 25th. But then we see many times where Christian things would supplant or try to take over. It's like in Norway, the old churches, the original ones, would have the pulpit, prekestolen, or the pulpit in the north, because magic flowed from the north down. And so you'd want to have that flow down over the pulpit to the congregation. So, and again, you had a lot of regional, as Chipikan said, regional things like valley to valley to valley. Like various places in Norway, they'd never heard of Odin until Victorian times. So, but Thor, everybody knew Thor. And everybody knew Frey and Freya, the natural earth and fertility. Thor was the natural cosmos. And then Tyr was the acts in honor of humans. And the runes, the families, the Etir, are in those names. And Odin had nothing whatsoever to do with runes. That was much later. That was in the early medieval times from Snorri Sturluson. But anyway, again, very regional things. There's a place in Sweden called Elvedal, which their language is closer to Old Norse than modern Swedish. And in Iceland, the kids there read Old Norse as if it very easily, because Old Norse is to modern Icelandic as Shakespearean English is to modern English. So, and then a lot of the folklore out in the boonies was transmitted from mouth to mouth to mouth and didn't have this overriding theological, oh, you have to do this. Paganism is very interesting because we can each practice in our own way, and we are all sort of blue domers, the natural earth, the natural cosmos. And it's not a, you've got to do this doctrine or else. And it's interesting to see that there are some of the very ultimate right, all very, very hard right Christians are having problems because they think that Jesus is too woke. Over.
Just coughing, so I had to shut myself up. Yeah, one of the things that I think is a great example of the starting a holiday is Talk Like a Pirate Day. A couple guys were having fun talking like a pirate while playing handball, and decided they'd keep doing it, and told their friends, and they told their friends, and practically the way the SCA started is if there's something fun and other people start doing, they came up, I forget, there was some TV show, they came up with the idea of Festivus, which is I think on the 23rd, and it's a festival for the rest of us. And they have a poll that they put up, and they have feats of strength and airing of grievances and things. And other people have latched onto that. I forget which TV show that was from. Another TV show got Galentine's Day, where girlfriends hang with each other instead of feeling miserable when they didn't have Valentine's, if they don't have Valentine's. And yet, after the popularity of Talk Like a Pirate Day, which you can see all over the culture, there's Talk Like William Shatner Day, a lot of pauses on the 3rd of on the 22nd of March, which is his birthday. Talk Like Shakespeare Day, which on the May, no, it's the 4th, the 23rd of March, and Talk Like Yoda Day is the 21st of May. And so once you get something that people have fun with, they're going to take off and adapt it to something that makes them happy. So, but you can make up a holiday. But if you want to make up something that is useful, something that's meaningful to you, as I say, I focus on food a lot. And one of the things that I discovered in researching holidays was there was a tradition of mince pies in England. And I heard that you're supposed to eat 12 mince pies during the 12 days of Christmas. Well, I was picturing the full size pies that my mother would make one or two of a year. It's like, oh my goodness. But no, apparently mince pies are bite-sized, little teeny tarts. But the tradition is that when you give them sort of have some luck, and when you're offering the pies, and for every pie you eat, you get a month of luck, and you're supposed to eat 12 of these. But the luck only comes when it's a pie from a different household, a different cook has made it. And this came up when I was reading about the First World War. And a lot of the women would, of course, if your husband or your son was over in the trenches, you wanted to have him have as much luck as possible. So these women would take their mince pies around to their neighboring women and trade, so they could send 12 different mince pies to their sons and husbands and brothers over in the trenches. And can you imagine, you want to live, you want to get home, you open up this package from home, and all your buddies are kind of like, oh, you got mince pies. And you want your buddies to be alive too, but it's like, that must have been greater love hath no man than to share his mince pies with his buddies. But if you think about it, just what is the effect of this tradition going to have? It's going to get neighbors to visit neighbors and share food. Oh my goodness gracious, that is such a community building thing. Trick-or-treating, back when it was tricking, when they started it, it was they would trick. And that was blowing off, that was high spirits. But when they started treating in the 40s and 50s, when you'd go get treats, it was community building. For a little kid, especially the youngest little kids, grammar school kids, you would see just even a glimpse into other people's houses, into strangers' houses, and see it was just like yours. You would have people giving you treats, and you had a mask on. So it wasn't that they were being nice to you because they knew your parents, because they didn't know who you were. This was a great way for kids to discover that the big wide world wasn't so dangerous. And of course, that changed when people started saying, well, you got to check your candy and make sure it's not poison. A completely different thing has come out of the thing. Of course, in Europe, especially in England, there were a whole lot of holidays. Christmas, where people the poor, it was accepted for the poor to go around and beg for a little extra from people who could afford it in order to get something for their holidays. Soul cakes were essentially a small, sweet, spicy bannock or cookie or bun that women would make, and the people would go and they would sing. I think it goes, soul, soul, soul cake, please, good mistress, soul cake. Apple, pear, a plum, or a cherry, any good thing to make us merry.
Yes, merry.
And this was something that they would go around, and the tradition was that you'd give them fruit, you'd give them soul cake, you'd give them something. The poor were allowed on certain times of year to go around and beg, but they were supposed to entertain you in exchange for what they were doing. And that was done at Christmas time. That was where caroling came from, that they would essentially be holding people up for liquor. And
the Mari Luid, the horse skull, and also wassailing all over the town. Yep.
And it's a butler, bring us a bowl of your best, and we hope that your soul in heaven may rest. But if you bring us a bowl of the small, well, down will go butler bowl and all. I mean, they weren't above threatening them if they didn't give them the good stuff. And in when it came over, there was those traditions in England, and I mean in America, in the United States, where the slaves, and then it carried on for a little while afterwards, where there was the role reversal in Rome. Saturnalia was a big deal with role reversal. That one goes from the 17th to the 23rd of it was bracketed the solstice. And they exchanged presents. They gave out they had little images they would put up, which they would sometimes hang in trees. They gave gifts of money. They did role reversal. The masters served the slaves, and the slaves served the masters. And that was something. In the Middle Ages, they had boy bishops, and that went right up to recently, where the students would be allowed to lock the professors out of their rooms. Role reversal is a great way to blow off steam, and that is a part of many holidays. There's a lot of things you can see in different holidays that are very useful for culture. And so when we look at the holidays that occur in different cultures and in different time periods, you can find things that would be really useful. You say, we should do that, or no, we don't need that, and that's not good for us. And so that's a kind of an important thing when you are working on your own. And we got to remember, in the scheme of things, modern neo-paganism is fairly new. We had, when I first joined, other people who were willing to come out and say they were pagan, just about everybody I met was Wiccan. And so that was the way that people were going to be doing it. And I came up, I am so blessed. I discovered the Handmaidens of Frigga, and I said, let's have the handmaiden Wicca. And because one of her handmaidens is the doorkeeper, and one of her handmaidens is a messenger, and one of her handmaidens is the keeper of the treasure. And I was like, oh, this is, and there's 13 of them when you've got Frigga and the 12 handmaidens. This is wonderful. Well, thank goodness I even had people started to join it. And at this point, if it had taken off and I'd written a book about it, there would probably be handmaiden Wicca all over America, and it would be an old tradition, and I would be the grand old lady of the tradition. And I am so happy that I never got it off the ground, because it was dumb. I am much happier with the peasant pagan tradition, which is simply, we're going to follow what feels right, when we're doing it.
Because the Wicca that evolved, I'd never heard of that, even though I was pagan before that.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, that seems to be a very organized thing, and with initiatory steps, etc. And it's much more a sort of a defined thing rather than an individual thing. And most of us out here, and it's amazing, paganism is really growing worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the sort of quote authorities unquote don't recognize paganism as being a growing thing, and people are dropping off from some of the other religions. I see a lot of people that had been Catholics, etc., or Christians or Jews or whatever, who are joining or becoming or incorporating, and are not tied to a authoritarian, because a lot of the religions are authoritarian, particularly the Abrahamic ones, rather than free floating. Over.
Yeah, this is true. We're a lot of us are coming from, even if we are proud pagans, and I think people are less likely to convert to paganism than they are to discover that they're pagans. There's like, you know what, the way I think about things, oh my goodness, I'm a pagan. So it's not something that you convert to. I've seen people convert to Buddhism, or convert to Judaism, or convert to Catholicism. If there's something about it that appeals to you, and I always told the kids, you can, whatever appeals to you, go for it. But pagans are usually coming out of a monotheistic culture, in at least the American and Europeans are coming from a monotheistic culture. And because of that, we expect to get together on a regular basis, worship together. And so what do we do about the mothers that have babies? Do you want the babies crying in the middle? Can you dance around a circle carrying a baby? What about the people in wheelchairs? There's certain things about Wicca that, when Gardner started Wicca, one of the things he stated was that it was to be done inside with small groups, because it was not acceptable, and it would be a lot easier to do it with just a small group of people in a living room, especially since they were being nude, which was an egalitarian thing. It was going to put, if you're going to be nude, you want to be warm. And as I
in Norway, that would not work, because in the summer the mosquitoes would get you, and in the winter you'd freeze your ass off. Mm-hmm. So we never had anything like that.
No,
he had his defined thing, and it was a very defined thing, whereas a lot of the pagans now are way outside the box, and like you and me and others, it's an individual, it's that rather than a defined thing. Over.
Yeah. And I do think that there's no reason not to pick something. Let's face it, the gods will invade our minds, our souls, whatever, and say, I want you to do this thing for me. If they can, come to us and say, we want you to do, I would really like to have, a dollar for everybody I know who worked with Bridget, and then Bridget sent her to Freya, or Freya sent her to Bridget. Or the gods from different pantheons do generally seem to talk to each other. So we don't have, we talk about religious syncretism, but I don't think we have to be afraid of it. We should be respectful of indigenous religions, but the thing that the Native Americans have a huge problem with is people coming in, reading a book, taking it over, and monetizing it. The Native Americans, the indigenous tribes, were famous for letting white people who respected them come in, learned from their wise people, and join the community, and they would be happy to teach them the ways of the spirits. But it wasn't meant to be something that you could then turn into a way to charge $300 for a religious retreat by claiming that you were 1/32nd some tribe. If that's not respect, and I think that we should show respect for that. There's no reason not to adopt good things about. They said, wow, the Shinto do that really right. The Hindus do that really right. But you don't say, I'm going to do Shinto, but I'm going to fix it. That would be wrong. You say, I'm going to do it my way for my family. Would you like to come over and see how we do it? You're welcome. And that is a wonderful way of doing it. I would be interested if anybody else, Joe, Laska, Robin, if you have anything that you'd like to throw into this, because it's a It is one.
So,
Jane pointed out in the chat that I write cookie book. Yeah, I did. I actually pitched them to Llewellyn, and and they said, oh well, if you would, why don't you make them sweeter? And I said, oh, but people who bake cookies themselves want rich. They don't want sweet. And they said, well, if you won't work with us. And I later found out that they essentially say something similar to any potential author. And that, okay, you're doing a book on astrology, you're doing a book on what, and they want you to change something. And if you won't do whatever they say, no matter how stupid it is in whatever your area of expertise is, then they're not going to do it. And then the year and a half later, they came out with their own series of cookbooks. It was like, okay, you like the idea, you just don't want to buy mine. Fine.
well, I like your cookie book, and this is one of the ones that I consult. And if I need to do cookies, I use your cookie book. Yum, because each recipe is tested. Now, also with other gods, for example, Ganesha, remover of obstacles. I'm Norse tradition, but if there is a deity from another pantheon who fits the bill, hey, I'm equal opportunity. And, so I think that many of us who are in the pagan community, again, rural rather than the elite types, we are much more flexible, and flexibility. And does this meet our needs? Over. Yeah, my father was a radio ham, so we always say over. I remember on our sailboat in Scandinavia, and my mother on single sideband talking to my grandmother in Chester, Connecticut, and we'd be behind some island in Sweden. My grandmother loved to say over. Over.
And that continues. Yeah, well, we do that, and we continue to I am going to say one thing though about, you can be open to gods of any pantheon, and very few gods. The reason I didn't get along with many of the early heathens I bumped into first was they said, well, you can't work with Apollo, you can't work with Anubis, you can't work with, I work with the Virgin Mary. I have a very close personal relationship with Mary, and I'm not Catholic, but she came to me in dreams, and I will work with her. But I will remind you that when it's time to move all of your stuff from one apartment to another, you don't go out and ask people on the street to help you move. You ask your friends and you say, yes, there's pizza and beer in it for you, but you go to somebody who you have a relationship with, and you don't use your list of correspondences and go ask a god for some favor just because he's the god of that area. You work with them, get a relationship, and when you have the relationship, then you ask for favors, because you work with the deity because they are individuals. They may all have a slightly different take on it. Let's just face it, that Thor is the thunderer, Jupiter is the thunderer. There's lots of different thunderers. Read Jane's book on the divine thunderbolt. You can find out a lot more about them. But they're not interchangeable. They have a lot in common because they're working with the same thing. Any Smith god is going to be working with metals, and you can learn a lot about through working with them. But you're going to have to burn your hands to have a relationship with a Smith god, and probably smash your thumb a few times. If you want Mother Hola to teach you spinning, you're going to have to keep your floor swept, your dishes done. So
we're running low on time, Chipicon, so maybe yes, Laska or Robin or Joe have something to add.
Anybody?
Yes, hello. How are you? Thank you so much. It was a really interesting look into your seasonal life. Felt like sharing your celebrations. My family definitely did things like John the Baptist got associated with Midsummer Night and with Rusali, the celebrations of Rusalki. So it was always the night of going, shortest night of the year, bonfires, gathering herbs, taking a dunk in the river. That was always a great way to mark the middle of a summer. Of course, after so many years of authoritarian religion first suppressing all the pagan traditions in Russian Empire, and then later militant atheism in Soviet Union, so many traditions got stamped out pretty hard. But definitely food. Another big one was always beginning of Lent, even though we had kind of almost no idea. Like growing up, I didn't know what Lent was, but the making of pancakes at the right before it's kind of like rolled back and reversed from a religious holiday to back to the Slavic roots under Soviet Union. And
there's an excellent book on Slavic traditions called The Bathhouse at Midnight.
Oh yes, I read it. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
it's wonderful. It's so dense and has so much good information in it. But yeah, reading it, a lot of the stuff I recognized from what we did, but a lot of stuff was, it's something they had to collect, as you said, from a boonies where people didn't have to pretend so much. Because I come from Moscow, and there, in the center, everything would be stamped out a lot more. Everything would be just way too visible for people to keep up traditions. But they did a great research, just going out into those villages where people are still held on to so much of the old ways. And of course, yes, food was, when I was growing up, it was still, food was super seasonal. It wasn't like strawberries at the supermarket every day. No, you only get strawberries when strawberries are blooming. You only get apples in the fall, and you best preserve them.
Yep.
So it was still very tied to a natural cycle of food to a holiday. Like,
yep. It is. And
yeah.
I'm glad for anybody who's in here tonight. As I said at the beginning, I didn't. I said it before we began. Tonight is the night before Thanksgiving, is also called Taiwan On Night, which is kind of a joke between the tie an apron on to do the baking. And tie one on, as in get ready to have a hangover all day tomorrow. It's a great way to do it. I noticed that there is a quit smoking campaign that begins 2 weeks before Thanksgiving.
Oh, irritable people.
Can you imagine how often you're in the midst of the worst part of your withdrawals when you go see your relatives? What a
January 1st.
Bad
do
timing.
January 1st for all your resolutions.
No,
that's when you do it.
Not good so thinking. Silly. It's also called it's called Blackout Wednesday, because this is apparently the night that has the most between the traveling people do for Thanksgiving and the drinking when they get together. This has got more auto fatalities than any other day.
Definitely.
So that's a very sad thing. But so when we are making holidays, be careful out there and be aware of what the traditions are going to do. When I started making the cookbooks,
Yeah.
The reason I started making the cookbooks was because I wanted a printed one. If there are cookie books, I have over there 2 shelves of cookie cookbooks. With, you know, there are Spanish cookies and Russian cookies and Mexican cookies and whatever cookies, and I wanted there to be pagan cookies, because if your mother takes a book off the shelf and it's got and you know you are simply another American subculture. You are not, if she takes off the shelf a Xeroxed stapled together thing, then you're a bunch of flakes. So I wanted to get a published cookbook, and that was why I started writing these cookie books. But
and those are damn good cookies too.
Yes, and I checked when I named the cookies, I made sure that I would talk to ISIS or whatever, and I would say, is this acceptable to you? Is this a cookie that you like? So the Ganesha's treats are not, they're based on snickerdoodles, but they have sesame seeds and saffron in them. So Ganesha likes those very nice. So
but anyway. Another point, when you were talking about Native American cultures and cultural appropriation, one big thing with Thanksgiving, it is a rose-colored glasses view of American history. So just kind of the last few years were good about importance of acknowledging it, but still reclaiming the holiday as thankful.
Yeah, and I like that they're Native American Day. So I'm going to sign off, and we will all look forward.
Lots to do tonight and tomorrow.
That's what I'm going to be making more pies, because I think that they do refer to it as Pie Day, and although they also like March 14th as Pie Day.
Pie Day.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you very much to everybody who's watching on YouTube and people.
I'm very thankful for all your friendship.
Thank you. So
have a wonderful